Rabbi Hanoch Alexander used to tell a story about a man each morning who had difficulty remembering where he had put his clothes the night before. And so he took a pencil. He decided to write himself a little note where he put each article of clothing. He then put that note next to his bed, and he said, okay, so tomorrow I'm going to have no problem remembering where I put my clothes. Now I know what all of the wives in this room are thinking right now. He's a man. He probably lost the note too. It's with his missing clothes, and his missing wallet, and his missing car keys. It's somewhere else in the house. But at least in our story today, that's not what happens. The next morning, the man wakes up. He takes the note. He follows it to the letter of the law until he is fully dressed. Until, that is, he realizes something. The man realizes that he is in fact not fully dressed. He spent the entire night finding and preparing his clothing, but he only spent a fraction of that time, if no time at all, in preparing himself. He cries to himself, I have found my clothing. My clothing is here. But where am I? Why aren't I here? Why didn't I show up ready this morning? So too it is with us, says Rabbi Hanoch Alexander. We all spend our mornings preparing our clothes, but we only spend a fraction of our morning preparing ourselves. In his book, Invisible Lines of Connection, Rabbi Larry Kushner speaks about how so few of us adequately prepare ourselves to get ready for the day. And he does it by talking about a dance that I hope that everybody in this room is relatively well acquainted with. I'm not sure about our 7th grade class because there have not been as many bar mitzvah parties this year. But the dance is called the Hokey Pokey. Y'all know how it begins. It begins with an arm and a leg. But how does it end? We put our whole selves in. We take our whole selves out. We shake it all about. That is what it's all about. Ah, writes Rabbi Kushner, so too we can't forget it is in life the same thing. We forget up and we forget to put our whole selves into what it is that we do. Maybe at best we focus on an arm or a leg and we shake it. But are we really showing up to not let every precious moment of life pass? Are we too busy wearing our quarantine sweatpants to put on our suits? Are we no longer worried about clothing even at all at the moment, no less showing up ourselves to the moment in which we find ourselves at that time? You know, over the past few months, I have been very blessed to, really a year at this point, it's hard to think about how time has gone by. I've been very blessed to be able to study Daf Yomi, the page of Talmud every single day. And not coincidentally, or perhaps coincidentally, the portion that I'm reading right now is all about this week's Torah portion, Emor. And when we think about the Kohen Gadol, which is what this portion of the Talmud Yoma is speaking about at the moment, what do we usually think about first with the high priest? We think about his clothing and what he wears. The Choshen, the breastplate with the beautiful stones, each one representing one of the tribes of Israel. We think about his mitznefet, his beautiful headdress. We think about the moment on Yom Kippur when the Kohen Gadol wore all white and walked into the Holy of Holies looking his absolute best. And yet for all of the obsession with the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, and the garments that he was wearing, it might surprise you to find out that's not what the Talmud speaks about. There's nothing about handwritten notes where the Kohen Gadol left his clothing the night before. The Talmud's great concern is whether the high priest had the neshama, whether he had the soul and the spirit and the ruach and the energy to efficiently carry out his duties for the Jewish people. It may surprise you again to find out that in the Second Temple period, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, wasn't picked because he was the most righteous person in the world. The Kohen Gadol was picked because he might have had the most money to pay off the people in that time. There might have been bribes involved. The rabbis were very, very concerned that he might have looked glamorous in the part, but that he might not have been the best possible person with the neshama, the soul, to have met that sacred responsibility. And so I have to wonder, as we read in this week's parashah, as Maxwell and Michelle and Noah read so beautifully this morning, about all of the regulations and the rules that the Kohen Gadol had to do, we're all asking ourselves, why is this all here? I think we all know the answer. It's because the Torah wants to teach us it's about your inner chops as much as it is about your outer chops. We have in Parashat Emor laws and spiritual instructions for the Kohen Gadol to think about when he gets up in the morning. Just like Judaism and Torah are designed for all of us to know who we are when we get up in the morning, to develop our character, to give us an understanding about how we can put our whole selves in to every single thing that we do. As 21st century Jews, we are living in tumultuous times, and yet there continue to be so many ways that we can put our whole selves in to the world around us. Foremost, not by focusing on what we wear or what we have, but how we can take what we wear and what we have and we can make the world, use those things to make the world better. Friends, it's nice to have a nice car. It's even better when you use that car to go out and do a mitzvah with it. When you go to the grocery store, you buy canned goods to donate. Or when you go visit the elderly or do Bikur Cholim or go see a friend who is sick. That's how we put our whole selves in to everything we do. Friends, it's wonderful to be able to get dressed in the morning and to look our finest. But getting dressed is also good, and it's even better when we spend time thinking about how we're going to give of ourselves, of our kindness, of our neshamas to others. We can't forget the Torah famously teaches us that the Aron HaKodesh, the Holy Ark, had gold on the outside as well as on the inside. Why? Who was going to see the inside? Why does the ark need gold on the inside? It's to teach us that there is no piece of clothing that can teach others what our insides are about. We show others what we are about. We give of our whole selves when we go out and do kindness in the world. Friends, I know this is a time of pandemic. It has been a year and a half of what my wife likes to call sweatpants chic. Today, forget finding ourselves. We turn off our cameras on Zoom because we don't want other people to see who we really are. We don't have to get dressed at all. We've been retreating from life for a year and a half. But guess what? Soon, we're going to be entering a reasonable, normal existence. And I want all of us to begin thinking about how we are once again going to find ourselves in the morning. How are we going to get dressed each and every day? When we look in the mirror, I want this sermon to be your sticky note. I want it to be that little piece of paper that doesn't get lost with the car keys, but one that reminds you, as the Rebbe taught each day, that we must find ourselves in the morning. The real world, while it will certainly change, is not going to be a Zoom conference call with sweatpants chic. I'm sorry to tell those of you watching from home this morning. It's going to be a world where we have to go out and figure out once again how we put our whole selves into everything that we do, and we take ourselves out and put our whole selves in. And yet, at times, we're going to have to shake it up and shake it all a little about. This Shabbat is the moment, Parashat Emor, where we once again do the hokey pokey, where we find ourselves, because that, friends, is what life is all about. Amen.